I have a funny feeling people are playing about with me this morning. I was late yesterday. Everybody else seems to be late today. If this is a conspiracy, well done, everyone. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? I hope you're well, and I hope some names are going to start popping into the chat in just a moment. Who have we got over? Luz Sabrasa over on Instagram, and Rodrigo. Good morning to you over on Instagram. Today's after show chat, I'd like to give you a bit of a heads up about that. Today's after show chat will be about personal responsibility and accountability. And it was inspired by, you, all of you. You remind me a lot that there's a growing attitude of that's not my job within the demolition and construction industry. And I'm planning to take a look at that after the main part of the show. But if you have any examples of colleagues absolving themselves of accountability, I'd love to hear from you now. I'm getting slightly worried because I've not had a single comment in the chat since the show started, and I know we'd had a couple before, including when I can see it. There you are. Dan Cullen was here 9:24, but no sign of the chat being alive at the moment. So if anybody can let me have a message and let me know that all things are well, let's have a look. No, that's just to notify me that the show is live. I'll soldier on. In the hope that somebody pitches up and says hello. That would be nice. So without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro and get the show on the road and pray. Thankfully, I think somebody just good. That's more like it. I don't know what happened there, but everybody arrived at the same time. Ken Hatcher, good morning. Ken, Chris Ford, good day all. It's a bit cooler, more like summer. Thank you very much indeed for being here, Chris. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. You managed to make it on time this morning. I was here on time. I don't get the impression that you were. Although, having said that, I can see that you left that message at 10:01 and it didn't arrive until 10:04. 10:03 actually, which is rather weird. Dan Cullen's here. Jim Turner is here as well. Bright and breezy. Bloody lovely, he says. Sean Hughes. Good morning, Sean. Good of you to join us over from LinkedIn. Gary Muirhead is saying hello. I see. Why does the site manager form and pay price for someone's stupidity on sites? We'll come to that. Just in case you weren't able to hear what I was saying earlier, today's discussion, after show discussion, morning Mark Whiting, is going to be on personal responsibility and accountability, or the lack thereof. I've already written a headline for this, which is "That's not my job." That seems to be the way that the industry works now. Somebody else is always responsible for everything else, if you get my meaning. We'll come to that at the end of the show, but I've got some absolutely corking footage to show you. And just a very quick heads up, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but today's show is number 777. Or known as 777 in construction equipment circles. That will become important a bit later on, but first this. It is Thursday, the 15th of August. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, XCMG unleashes its latest mining excavator, quite possibly just in time for Mine Expo next month. Casey's electric dream machine becomes a reality. Nice dozer, interesting brand name. That will all make sense when we get there. And we are celebrating show number 777 with a look at an epic machine of the same name. We'll get to all of that in just a moment. Plus, as I've already flagged up in the after show news discussion portion of the show, we're going to be mourning the death of personal responsibility and accountability in life in general, but in construction in particular. So we'll be getting to that. What's happening over in the chat? Chris, that would have been far too easy, wouldn't it? Far too easy. Dan Cullen is going for the Bobcat skid steer. He's not that at all. I'm going to say good morning to Pivotal Plant Hire. Just joined us over on Instagram. Not sure where Pivotal Plant Hire are. If anyone knows, but good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Yes, before we get into the main meat of the show, we do need to start with the mystery machine, and it is neither a Cat 777 nor a Bobcat skid steer, but I'll show you what it is in just a moment. Jim, thank you very much indeed for that comment. I'm going to save it. I'm going to show you this one, but I'll save you a longer comment for later in the show because it ties in with what we'll be discussing after. There we are. Caterpillar 988. It's not. In fact, it looks like this. There you are. Not easy that, and I'm quietly confident that I might emerge with 3 points after this one. It's not the most common of machines. Let's just put it like that. If you care to have a stab at that, obviously you can see a part of a wheel. Is it a wheeled excavator? Is it a dumper? Is it a wheel loader? Is it something else on wheels? Hard to say. Dan Cullen is immediately in with the Wacker Neuson. It's not. Jim Turner, Wacker swivel deck cab dumper. It is neither of those things. Neither of those things. We'll come back to that because we do have the small matter of today's Excavator World Cup to worry about. So let me flag that up because we do have a little animation for that. Yeah, today's round of the Excavator World Cup sees Schaeff going head-to-head with Demolition, or Doosan if you prefer. The manufacturer with the most votes will go forward to the next round, while the manufacturer with the least will be going home. Probably don't need to remind you about this anymore, but I'm going to do it nonetheless. I'm going to say to you, imagine you've got £100,000 of imaginary money. You need to invest it in one or more excavators, and your choices are Demolition or Schaeff. Which one are you going for? Which one are you going for? And I can tell you, Garvin over on Mostly Diggers on Instagram has just guessed that our mystery machine, which looks like that, is a Weidemann wheel loader. It is not. So yes, I need you to type into the chat either Demolition or Schaeff, and I can see people have already started to do precisely that. Going back to the mystery machine, what have we got here? We've had a couple of Wacker Neusons. Ken Hatcher reckons it could be a Manitou forklift. It isn't. A Wacker Neuson EW100 wheeled excavator. It is not one of those. In fact, I'll tell you now, it is not a Wacker of any description. But just to be kind and sporting, there is a little bit more. Hope that helps. I have a funny feeling that today's Excavator World Cup is going to be a bit of a runaway whitewash for the fine folks at Demolition. Lots of votes coming in for that. So keep those coming. Demolition or Schaeff, you choose who goes forward to the next round. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to take that away and I'm going to play this. Yeah, Mine Expo is just over a month away now, and XCMG will be one of the exhibitors, and they've just unleashed a brand new mining excavator, and we've got a bit of a sneak preview of it right now. It's funny you should say that, Jim. I was just sat here thinking exactly the same thing. It's all gone very Pirates of the Caribbean. It was remarkably similar, wasn't it? Remarkably similar. And Steve Williamson is saying Beast of an XCMG. That looks a good cab too. Assuming, I don't know why I'm assuming, but if that is at the Mon Expo show, I'll be sure to get in the cab and get up close and personal with that. Still planning to do an extended show. Not an extended show, an extended film about Mine Expo. I'm planning to take the little camera with me and to basically have it follow me everywhere, down the strip, into the hotels, but also into the showground as well, and try and give you some thoughts and basically the flavour of the show while I'm there. In my head, I've got it down as maybe a half-hour film. It could go as long as an hour, but just want to gather as much as I can. And then we'll sit down one evening and play it. You can watch it along with me. So looking forward to bringing that to you. We're going to be right back after a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
I'm struggling to remember, but I think it was the Con Expo before last that the fine folks at Case decided that they were going to go all electric on one of their backhoe loaders. They called it at the time Project Zeus, or as they pronounced it, Project Zeus, which followed up from Project Tetra, which was their biofuel wheel loader, which is yet to see the light of day as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I'm aware anyway. But the Project Zeus, Project Zeus, has become a reality, as you're about to see.
This is about energy. The energy to think like a startup. The energy that led us to invent the first factory-integrated backhoe loader. Now, we're introducing a machine that runs on a new kind of energy, born from the same energy that's driven us all along. The new Case 580 EV. The world's first purpose-built electric backhoe loader. Zero on-site emissions, quiet operation, yet comparable in performance to our industry-leading lineup of traditional machines. It's built to open doors to new projects in new environments, in noise-sensitive areas, and on contracts that specify the use of alternative fuel machines. We are ingenuity-obsessed to deliver machines that help our customers win. Diesel and electric. It's what all our energy goes into. Try one. Visit kce.com. Case. No one will outwork us.
Kind of my mantra, that is. No one will outwork me. These people that have their YouTube channels that produce one video every 6 months and claim to be a rival. Oh, you're not in the same league, people. Steve says, electric backhoe. Electric backhoe indeed. So let me go back to the mystery machine. I'll show you a bit more in a second because we've had a few more guesses. Not entirely sure where our man Dan is going with that. A Volvo Cat 966C. A Volvo Cat. Not sure that's the thing. Gary is going for the Wiedemann 3070 CX80. It is not. Dan is also going for the Alex Chalmers wheel shovel. It's not one of those either. Couple of things here. Yeah, and I have to say, I totally agree with this. Steve Williamson says, cracking machines, those Case excavators. I agree. And Gary Muirhead says, I don't think Case get enough credit. They're really good machines. 100%. 100%. I mean, I think in backhoe loader terms, they are probably on a par with the fine folks at JCB. The problem is, if you're watching this in the UK, JCB kind of has the lion's share of the market. And I think but most people in the UK tend to think backhoe, think JCB. But as you rightly say, yes, Case do make some damn fine machines. Now, on the mystery machine, we do need to show you a bit more. Bit more color scheme there. Does that help at all? Steve says, Case for smoothness is way better than Volvo, in my opinion. Really? That is quite a statement. Quite a statement. Going back to the mystery machine again, Chris Ford is going for the Bray PS 5000. It's not one of those. Not one of those. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that because I do have other stuff to show you. And the next one that's coming up is weird. Just going to pop back to all things case related. Jim Turner says, only ever been on one case backhoe loader was Rob Fox's, and I was quite impressed with it. Mystery Machine, Gary is going for the Komatsu WA70M-8. It's not. Shall I show you a bit more, just to be absolutely fair? Here we go. Here we are. Probably not that helpful at all, really, but you know, I'm trying. Keep the guesses coming in, people. It's obviously a wheel loader. I think we've all figured that out. But we need to name a name and a model, if you would be so kind. Now, you know, when you go on holiday and you see those guys, we refer to them in this family. I'm sure this is not unique to us. We refer to them as the looky man. You know, they sell knockoff designer clothing with names like Adibas, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and Dolce and Banana. You get the idea. Well, apparently the same rules apply in construction equipment. How else do you explain the name of this dozer? Look, I realise that JCB are not actually active in the dozer market. That can't be a coincidence, right? JCB ASE, that can't be a coincidence. Don't know how they get away with it sometimes. Now, going back to the Mystery Machine, I have apparently got you puzzled. There's Gary going with the WA70M-8. I think we've already mentioned that one. It's not one of those. Dan Cullen going a bit more obscure with the International H65. He's also going with the Mulehill B5000. It's not any of those things. In fact, nobody's even come up with the right make yet, I'll tell you that much. And Gary is going with the Bobcat L85. Looks like I need to show you a smidge more, doesn't it? I tell you what, I'll be doubly generous. There you that doesn't really help at all, does it? So yes, you've got one more film to get through. Otherwise, I'm going to claim the points on this one. So let me take that away, because we do have something else coming up for you in just a moment.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I don't know how closely you were paying attention at the top of the show, but today is our 777th episode of the Breakfast Show. 777, 777, you might say. It reminds me of something. Yeah, that film's 13 years old. 13 years old. I don't know what it is. Obviously, Caterpillar make bigger trucks than that now, obviously, like the 793, but there's something about the 777. Just, iconic in my head. It looks like I've won today on the mystery machine. I'm going to put it up on the screen. What else do we have? Gary is going with the O&K L15PZ. It's not. Chris Ford going really obscure with the Hatra loading shovel. It's not. Dan Cullen going JCB loading shovel. Gary going with O&K L20. None of you are right. Not the right make, not the right model, nothing at all. So I shall reveal all. It is a Zettelmeyer 802 SI. Zettelmeyer. That's the name you were missing. I think you covered just about every other potential wheel loader base, but you didn't mention Zettelmeyer. So I'm gonna claim the 3 points on that, which puts me. I'm fairly sure that may well put me in second place. Yeah, I think that puts me in second place. Dan Cullen still leading the way with a. Let me see, how many has he got? 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 12 points. I've got 9 points. Chris Ford, I think, has got 6. So yes, Dan Cullen. I thought you'd forgotten to do this. Now that was my next guess. Damn. Never gets old, that does it? I do need to go back to all things related to our mystery machine because I do need to do this basically for Instagram. So the latest round of our Excavator World Cup competition pitted Schaeff against Demolition, but which brand came out on top? Well, we put it to the public vote, and I can tell you that the winner is Demolition. Demolition goes forward to the second round, while sadly Schaeff leaves us empty-handed without a single vote. Tomorrow's match is an absolute humdinger. It's Komatsu going head-to-head with Lugong, so make sure you tune in and take part. Right, that's that part done. I'm going to go over into the after-show chat in just a second. So let me do the final bit, and then we'll have a natter. I've got a bit of a spiel on it want to go through, and then we'll have a chat. So here we go. Just under the radar, Demolition, says Steve Williamson, but wouldn't pick either, to be honest. Fair enough. Right, okay. I'd like to tell you a story. It's a story you may have heard before. It's a story about 4 people named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was asked to do it. Everybody was sure somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. I had to write that down because it's quite complicated. I want to talk about personal responsibility, or more specifically, the lack thereof. We are, I believe, witnessing a profound shift in how individuals perceive and approach the concept of personal responsibility. The notion of taking ownership for one's actions, decisions, and their consequences, which once stood as a cornerstone of character and integrity, seems to be eroding in today's society. At the heart of this issue lies a growing culture of blame shifting and victimhood. More and more, we see people quick to point fingers, assigning fault to external circumstances, other individuals, or societal structures, rather than looking inward. Whether it's blaming the economy for their own poor financial decisions, social media for relationship problems, or systemic issues for personal shortcomings, the tendency to deflect responsibility has become alarmingly common. While external factors do play a role in our lives, they do not absolve us While external factors do play a role in our lives, they don't absolve us of the responsibility for our own choices and actions. A key factor contributing to the decline of personal responsibility is the increasing reliance on external authorities and systems to manage our lives. From government programs designed to address individual hardships to corporate policies that seek to mitigate employee failures, there's a growing expectation that someone else will step in to solve our problems. While those systems can provide much needed support, they can also foster a sense of dependency that undermines personal responsibility. Excuse me. Now, think about that from a demolition and construction perspective. Workers are bombarded with reminders, particularly in the sphere of health and safety. There are toolbox talks, pre-start briefings, safety meetings. Workers are reminded to stay hydrated, given sun cream, and are constantly reminded of the potential hazards and pitfalls that might await them. Personally, I believe that this constant bombardment has caused some workers to absolve themselves from any form of accountability and personal responsibility. They see a hazard, but they don't report it because they believe, perhaps wrongly, that someone else will pick it up. They won't make a suggestion about how a task might be performed more safely or more quickly because it's not in their job description. Over the course of decades, we've evolved away from an all hands to the pump mentality to a it's not my job mentality. And is this a rod we've made for our own backs? Having defined just about every task on a demolition or construction site by a coloured competence card, have we brainwashed individuals into believing they must do only what it says on their card? Have we instilled a feeling of responsibility fatigue with our constant barrage of do's and don'ts? Or do we live in an age in which all problems, issues, and challenges now belong to someone else? Whatever the cause, it has worrying consequences for the demolition and construction industry. For decades, the sector has worked on the basis that everyone is pulling together, that everyone will do the task assigned to them to the best of their ability, that everyone will take responsibility for their actions. In day-to-day life, a refusal to take personal responsibility is just another traditional value that appears to be lost. In demolition and construction, that failure to take personal responsibility could cost someone their life. And just one other quick final point. Having spent a bit of time thinking about this subject, I'm now wondering if the industry has inadvertently created an atmosphere of safety fatigue. After the Live Aid concert back in 1985, there was a lot of talk about compassion fatigue. We'd all been exposed to so many images of starving African children that it had rendered us numb. I now wonder if we've done the same thing with all of our talk of health and safety. Not saying we should do away with it. I'm just saying, I wonder if you're constantly bombarded, sooner or later, I think you just become numb. I also believe that we've deliberately or otherwise bred a generation of workers that have simply absolved themselves of all responsibility. PPE, company will provide that. Water on a hot day, company will provide that. Sun cream, the company will provide that. I was listening to a podcast recently in which a couple of retired footballers were explaining how hard they found it to adjust to normal life post-football. For 20 years or so, their every move had been managed. They were told where to be and when. Their meals were prepared for them. When all of that was taken away, they were lost. And I wonder if we have a workforce that is kind of lost. They've surrendered all responsibility to the powers that be and are now basically unable to think for themselves. I'd like to get your thoughts. I did promise I'd go back to Jim Turner's comment early doors, and I'm going to do precisely that. Where is it? It is here. Jim says, there's no such thing as it's not my job. If you're being paid by a firm or an individual, it's your responsibility to be as efficient as possible with plant materials, fuel, muck, etc. Basically run things as if it was your own money that's at stake. That, Jim, I agree. That is as it should be. Is that how it is? My feeling is that is not how it is. Might be how it used to be, but I don't get the impression that's the case anymore. It's the operators that track past things they could tidy up, or track past unsafe things and think, not my job. I'm the opposite. Help everyone on site while you can, and you'll be the last machine to leave. Yeah. Too many lazy bastards. And again, I realise, I think as a society and possibly as a workforce, we are more aware now. I think for many, many years, I think the inclination was basically as a working person, you did precisely what you were told. I think we are a little more enlightened now, and I think we can now spot where some of the requests made by our employers are unreasonable. And I think there are mechanisms in place now to address those. But I do wonder if it has actually bred a generation of site workers, operatives, operators, in all shapes and forms, that now I am being paid for, 70, 80 hours a week to do this task, not that task, not that task. If I'm an operator and there's somebody needs some help actually outside the cab, not my job, not my problem. As my daughter loves to say, not my circus, not my monkeys. And I wonder if we've actually made a body for that system for ourselves. Dan Cullen, a lot of bodies and no tits in that sentence. I don't even remember what the sentence was, but thank you. You can tell a good operator from a bad operator from the state of the machine. There's another thing. And I was coming at this primarily from a health and safety point of view. You know, if there's an operator drives past an open manhole without stopping to do something about it, that was where I was coming from. But it is even things like that. You know, an operator, particularly one that's not assigned to a specific machine, who will, you know, use it, abuse it. It will get dirty, tracks clogged up, crap in the cab, an absolute horrendous state. Not their problem, not their machine, not their problem, no, not their circus, not their monkeys. There is no I in team, and I see lots of this. I'm a team player, yet they do the stupidest things on site. Any failings on site foreman get all hell as the guys don't take the method statements in or safety. Again, you think about that. You think about the constant exposure to risk assessments, method statements, toolbox talks, pre-start briefings, and all of that kind of thing. It's just constant. And I wonder if it's a bit like I get when my other half is nagging me. You know, I'll listen for the first couple of minutes, and after that, I'm looking and I'm nodding, but I'm tuned out. I'm elsewhere. I've gone to my happy place. I'm not actually taking any of that in now. And I wonder if we've bred that into the industry now, whereby we're constantly. I think mollycoddling. You know, I understand the need for hydration. I understand the need for sun protection. Look at the state of me. I'm as pasty as anything. I understand all of that. But is that the responsibility of the employer, or is that the responsibility of the employee? And I think in the specifically, well, both of those, in actual fact, I do wonder if both of those are in place more as an arse covering than an actual help. You know, nobody wants to, you know, have a worker go face down because they've passed out through lack of hydration, because, you know, where there's blame, there's a claim and everything else. So I wonder if that is going to be the case. I just wonder if we're just so bombarded. And I go back to Live Aid. You know, there is, if you look on the internet, there's talk about compassion fatigue. You know, we spent 2, 3, 4 years being reminded of starving African children, which was harrowing, absolutely harrowing. And, you know, I donated it. It tugged at my heartstrings, and it was a point of my life that, you know, is truly memorable. But after 2, 3, 4 years, you get to the point like, I can't feel the sympathy anymore. I can't feel the empathy. Going to say good morning to Andy here. Late coffee break today, not a problem at all, Andy. However, you have missed all the dancing girls. I apologise. Dan Cullen says, exactly, I see it every day. Not my job. I'm a machine driver. I need more money if I get out of the cab, blah, blah, blah. And don't forget, I'm not insured to get out. Again, there is another point. And I do wonder, you all know by this point, I have very, very strong feelings on the competence card scheme that has permeated the industry. But I wonder if we've now got to the point where I need a card, I need a prop. Bear with me a second. I'll use the NHS card. I wonder if we got to the point now where that's it. That's my job. I don't do that thing over there. I don't do that thing over there. That's my job. You know, I'm a dumper driver. I'm a dozer driver. I'm an excavator driver. I don't help with groundworks. I don't move bits of pipe. I don't put manhole covers back on. I don't do any of those things. I do what it says on my card. And if that's the case, I mean, I think the card scheme needs rethinking anyway. But I think that's then exacerbated, as Dan has rightly said there, with insurance. You know, are we now at the point where nobody dare get out the cab of the machine and help those on the ground, their work colleagues, They daren't get out because they're not insured for that. Is that the case? Is that the case, or is that a perception? If it's a perception, who's reinforcing that perception? Jim says we don't have a workforce anymore. We have a wokeforce. Oh, well done. Well done on the play on words there, Jim. Love that. Always someone else's fault, not their job. Yeah. Obviously, we gather here today. We gather here every day. We look at the world through the lens of demolition and construction. But think about this more broadly. Think about politicians, for example. When something goes wrong, there is always, always, always a scapegoat. You know, when Liz Truss trashed the economy, somebody else's fault, somebody else's problem. And ultimately, she was out of the job in a couple of weeks. It was somebody else's problem. And that seems to be the case. You know, how many times do you see celebrities caught with their pants down? Somebody else's fault. You know, I was lured into it, or whatever it might be. There you are. All this talk about work is beyond my pay scale. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah, absolutely. There we are. I'm back to the right place. Gary Muirhead says, I've got the mentality of think of the next man. Basically, think of how you would like to find it, like reinstating services, plenty of sand and warning tape. So when you come to it the next, there's no risk of a strike. Yeah. Yeah. And what I find bizarre is this is almost counterintuitive for this industry. I've spent the last 35 years writing about how the camaraderie within demolition and construction is akin to that in the armed forces, and it's for a reason, because you know your very life, your very existence depends on the guy working to you to your right and the guy working to your left. That's probably the other way around while you're looking at it, but you know the guys working either side of you, they have your life in their hands. And there was a time, I think, where you could look around you and think they've got my back, I've got theirs, they've got mine. I'm not convinced that's the case anymore. You know, I know it's a cliche, and if Mick Norton was here, I'm sure he'd mention it again. You know, we do have a generation now in excavator or equipment operator terms of what we refer to as seat warmers. They're not there for the passion for the job. They're not there for the love of the career. They're basically there strictly 9 to 5 or thereabouts. Get in, get the job done. Don't do anything beyond their pay scale, as Chris Ford described it. Just get in, get out, take the money. And you know, if I drive past an open manhole cover and then somebody falls down it half an hour later, not my problem. I didn't fall down the hole. Dan Cullen says, I'm on the verge of walking away from this game. So many flues on site. I won't do this, and not my problem. I won't see it from my house. Yeah. Listen, over the past couple of years, I think I've seen more instances of that attitude of literally people that have been in this industry for 20, 30 years, either saying I'm about to walk away or I've just walked away. Obviously, you know, money will be a driver and everything else. But I think if I was going to work with people 10, 15, 20 years ago that I knew had my back, even though I'm walking into a potentially hazardous area, particularly in demolition, I would know that they had my back. I would take some security from that. You know, I'd like to think that the guy operating the high reach is keeping an eye out for me because I'm keeping an eye out for him, and so on down the line. I think if I walked on a demolition site now as an operative, don't think I'd have the same feeling. I don't think I'd have the same feeling at all. Steve says, I'm constantly sorting and shaping things after operators that don't care or think. Steve will sort it out. And there's the other side of this. I mean, my primary concern here is for health and safety. You know, I don't want anybody being hurt, maimed, injured, or killed because somebody just went, not my problem. But to my mind, the other side of that, which is nowhere near as dramatic, but think about that. You know, as a result of the way that he works, Steve is actually doing his work and the work of probably 2 or 3 others, just because they don't care. So, he might normally work a 9 or a 10-hour day, but he's probably lost an hour there. I'll clear that up. I'll tidy that up. That needs sorting out. That somebody could get hurt with that. I'll do this. I'll do that. It's not his job, but he's doing it. So by absolving responsibility, absolving accountability, what they've actually done is say, not my problem. Steve, you have it. How is that fair? Jim Turner says, I don't fully agree with the state of the machine comment. My machine is mucky as I don't have time to clean it as it's always working, but oil and water are checked daily. Water trap emptied. It's always greased and mechanically looked after. Yeah, but you're basically full-time on the one machine, I'm assuming, Jim. And that's your working environment. And if you're happy with that, I think where it becomes a problem more of a specific problem is where you're working maybe with a rental machine that somebody is going to hand back, or if you're working where it's all hands to the pumps, and you might be on an excavator one day, dumper the next, but the dumper operator is now on the excavator and so on down the line. Doesn't seem fair to hand him a machine that he's like a skip inside. That was my point. It's everyone for themselves now. No getting out to help the guys struggling. They'd rather take pictures and videos and berate the guys making mistakes rather than go out and help. Smartphone, social media killed the industry too. I think there's a degree of that. I also think social media has got something to answer for in terms of personal responsibility. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. How many times do you switch on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and you see somebody has filmed a fight, a fight in the streets, or a police officer being assaulted? Now, if I'm walking down the street, even in my advanced years, and I see a copper being beaten up, stepping in. Just the way I was raised, I'm stepping in. And frankly, it's been an awful long time since I threw a punch. It's long overdue. I'd quite like the exercise. I would step in. The younger generation, rather than step in, will do that. They'll stand there and film it. So yes, Dan, I totally agree with what you're saying there. I'm going to say good morning to Gary McCusker. Just joined us over on Instagram. Morning, Gary. Haven't seen you for a while. There is a guy that has messaged me yesterday about a card app. He's designed it himself. All operators will have their cards and what jobs they've done, and will have reviews from customers. Seems a good idea. He wants me to sign up to help with it. I had a chat with somebody more than a year ago who was doing the same thing. I wonder if it's the same guy. Never got off the ground from memory, but yeah, there you are. We gather. I need to do this with some sort of pastoral voice. I think we gather here today to say goodbye to the industry. I'm all for progress, and my feelings on things like technology and stuff. Steve. Steve is a keen advocate for all things technological. I share his belief. I'm also conscious of the fact that at 59 years old, I am knocking on a bit. I've been there, done it, and maybe there is a degree of nostalgia in some of the things that I say. But I actually agree with Dan. Some of the things that really made this industry great seem to have been diluted of late. They really do, and I don't think it's to the better. And I can't help but think that the industry has brought it on itself. I don't think we've acted responsibly in. I mean, we've, as an industry, employers have basically allowed their employees to absolve themselves of responsibility in so many areas. Even things like PPE. Now, I think it's only right and proper that employers should provide employees with their PPE. But that used to be the operator or the operative's responsibility. They took responsibility. And I know there were some that turned up, oh, I forgot me high vis, or I forgot me hard hat. But that wasn't the majority. That was the minority. That was the lazy people that we were talking about earlier. Those that are truly dedicated to their job, dedicated to the application, dedicated to the industry, they weren't forgetting their high vis vests. They weren't forgetting their hard hats or their sight boots. They would turn up ready to work. But we've now got, oh, no, never mind. We'll take care of that. I've mentioned this before. Think about the rise of semi and automatic quick couplers. Why did they become a thing? Plain and simple. Yeah, listen, they are a great boon to efficiency. I think they've revolutionized the demolition industry and the construction industry as well. I think they're a fantastic thing. I'm a total believer. I'm a vocal advocate for all things quick coupler. But why did they come about? Because a lot of operators were too bone idle to get out of the cab to change from bucket to shear to pulverizer to grab, or whatever it might be. They were too bone idle to get out of the cab and change an attachment. And therefore, they were trying to make do with an attachment, and therefore they were abusing it. The outcome in that instance, we now have access to quick couplers, is a fantastic thing. But as an industry, we had to design out the laziness and the lack of will of some operators. How mad is that? Automatic greasing. Automatic greasing is a great labor saver. It's a fantastic thing. Why does it exist? Because we can't rely upon all operators to look after the machines in the way they're supposed to be. Mick Norton has just joined us. Morning, Mick. Good of you to be here. Gary Muirhead, do believe in jumping out the cab and helping out. I wouldn't see anyone struggling, but a good machine operator is worth more inside the cab. And if you need to constantly jump out and help, there's not enough ground workers on site. Employ more. It's a fair comment. It's a fair comment. But as I say, it runs deeper than just the industry. I think, when I was a kid, I'll give you an example from my wife's childhood. My father-in-law, they've lived in the same house for, 60 odd years. They've lived in exactly the same house, 60 odd years. And at one point they had to do some rewiring, and they had to reinstate the ceiling and then repaint the ceiling. Now, today we would outsource that, or, unless you're a real DIY enthusiast. My father-in-law basically went and knocked on the door of half a dozen of his neighbours and said, come and give me a hand, would you? And they spent an entire weekend doing his ceiling. They weren't paid. They get a cup of tea. They might have got a sandwich or whatever it might be. Can you imagine that now? Somebody knocked on my door and said, come and give me a hand with a ceiling. I mean, first and foremost, my answer would be, you don't want me anywhere near anything DIY related. But that's how it used to be. It was all hands to the pumps, all pushing in the same direction. Now I don't get that impression that's the case at all. I always put extra shingle sand on services. I was told, 3 inches enough. No, as ground settles and moves, so more in it, better the chances. No future strikes, indeed. Chris Ford says, morning, Mick. You could have won the mystery machine if you'd been earlier. We hadn't got a clue. No, I emerged victorious today, Mick. You'll be pleased to know. Steve Williamson says, if you have a gripper on a tilt rotator and GPS, a good operator will never need to leave the cab. Manhole lids, rubbish lying about, and use the gripper all the time, sorting out things as the day goes on. A machine should never be stopped. Wouldn't argue with that. But you remember, I'm sure you, excuse me, I'm sure there's still instances of this. I was on a job many moons ago, filming a Caterpillar wheeled excavator. And I'll bore you with the full story of it one of these days. But basically, we're filming a wheeled excavator, and the photographer that was doing the main bit of the filming was very, very slow, very meticulous. And we'd only been there for about half an hour, and a batch of concrete arrived. And there was probably a dozen guys on the site. And basically, the photography came to an end because all 12, including those in the machine, those outside the machine, all stopped what they were doing and made ready for this concrete. Got the concrete in place, and then they all went back to about their business. I don't get the impression that would be the case now. I get the impression it would be, well, that's, concreting. Yeah, not my job. Not my job at all. Mick Norton says the law remains clear. An employee has a duty of care to themselves and others who may be affected by their acts or omissions. That's what the law says. I'm fairly sure this is something that it may have been Dan Cullen mentioned a day or two ago. The issue we have now, and again, this all feeds into the bigger picture here. Yes, the law is clear. An employee has a duty of care to themselves and others who may be affected by their acts or omissions. So imagine, picture a scene. There is I'm going to use manhole covers because we mentioned it a few times. So there's a site in Croydon for no reason. There's a site in Croydon. There's about 20 blokes working there. There's a couple of machines, couple on the ground, and so on down the line. There is a manhole that is uncovered. Manhole cover is nearby, but it's not on the operator. In his machine, drives past, looks and thinks, oh, no, I can't be bothered. Operative walks past and has a look and thinks, yeah, I can't be bothered either. 5 minutes later, somebody walks along, falls down the hole, breaks their leg. Presumably, there will be a claim, and that claim will not be against the operator in the machine or the operative. It will be potentially the site supervisor or ultimately the principal or the owner of the company. I don't think that's fair. It's much the same. You know, we have this term now, corporate manslaughter. You know, when I'll try that again. When your company gets to a certain size, you as the company founder, principal, owner, director, you cannot possibly see every site all the time, every day. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, if you're a Birmingham-based demolition contractor and you've got 5 jobs on the go, all within a 5-mile radius, yeah, absolutely. You get up in the morning and you go site to site to site, make sure everything's hunky-dory, point out a few problems, and then go back about your business. If your 5 projects around Birmingham becomes 20 projects nationwide, you've got no chance. There's no way that you can do that. So with that in mind, should corporate manslaughter go that far back up the line? Surely that is what you're employing site supervisors, area managers. That's what you're employing them to do. Should the buck not stop with them? I'm asking the question. Right now there's muck. Muck and scratches up 4 foot up my about 4 foot up my stick. That's because the machine is here for production. I'll shift twice as much muck as anyone else. It's only getting level buckets, so keep the end of the arm clean. We're employed to make our employers money. It's true enough. Can get more in Tesco, less stress, more time for myself and family. It's a good point. If you're a good operator, I'm afraid you won't have a spare 5 minutes. Which kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Give me an idea of your working day. I'd be interested to know. There was a time when I first started in the industry, and I'm going back 35 odd years, and if I was going to a site, I always liked to be there before 9 o'clock, because come 10 o'clock, everyone was going for a coffee break or a fag break or a pee break or whatever it might be. And then around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 3:30, they'd do the same thing again. So there was a couple of periods in the day where not much was happening. You know, there were some jobs that needed doing, and they carried on. But you know, and then you obviously have a break for, you know, to get a sandwich on board or whatever it might be in the middle of the day. I don't seem to see that so much anymore. Is that a reflection of the skill shortage? Do we not have enough people on site? Or have we, like we mentioned with Steve, have we now taken on so much responsibility that we don't actually have that time anymore? We don't have the time at 10 o'clock. Thankfully, you clearly do, because you're sat here listening to this. But you don't have an hour for lunch. You have 10 minutes in your cab, wolfing down a sandwich as quickly as you possibly can, because there's another job it needs doing. And you can work through from 1 o'clock until 6. the afternoon break, I'll just grab a cup of coffee while I'm operating. I'll operate one hand and swig me coffee with the other. Is that where we are? Love to hear from you. Chris Ford says it all boils down to simply, if something goes wrong, we want someone to blame. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And again, not just in construction. I've told you this story so many times. I'm bored with it myself. But what is he? My eldest son actually moves out on Wednesday next week. Be sorry to see him go. He's been around for 30 odd years, so I will be sorry to see him go. But back when he was about 4 or 5 years old, we were at our local Sainsbury's superstore, and somebody had put out a sign, caution, wet floor. Somebody had dropped a carton of orange juice or whatever it might be, and I warned him, don't go anywhere near that because you'll fall over. Sure enough, that's exactly what he did. Covered in orange juice from head to toe, screaming because he'd whacked his head on the ground. First two people that arrived, both of them women, both of them you would have thought would have been maternal, both said, I hope you're going to sue. Sue who? My son for being a pillock. That part of his character hasn't changed, funnily enough. But at what point does that become the Sainsbury's fault? Now, there is a bit of me that wonders about that. If you've taken the time to go into the back of the shop to come out with one of those A-frames that says caution wet floor, could you not have brought a mop with you? Yeah, there is a bit of that. But that's not Sainsbury's fault. For a start, I doubt very much that it was somebody from Sainsbury's that spilt the orange juice in the first place. No dirt, but the ballast scrapped and bashed to fuck, he says. Sean says, what does Sean say? The card scheme is most definitely due an update. It's a smart card. Why can't experience be logged on it? But on the insurance point, I get out and help to a point. But I'm employed by the machine owner to drive the machine and sent out to customers on hire. If I'm injured on a client's site and unable to work, would it be fair on my employer to have to cover me? While I'm off due to helping cover a job that wasn't properly resourced. It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. Mick Norton asked you about the mission machine. I can show you. That's what it was. It was a Zettelmeyer 802 SI is what it was. Can't beat getting. Let me get rid of that. Can't beat getting your machine dirty. My old boy's emptying a slurry lagoon with a TH VC15 and no aircon and an aroma to make you cough. I've got one of my dogs under the desk at the moment. The aroma in here would make you cough too. I don't believe in being told a day before the HSE are visiting and everyone on site make sure that everything is in place for the visit. Does that mean you're safe the rest of the time? No. And again, I mean, we've discussed this before. There is this system of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors site audit scheme. And the idea was that they would audit each of their members. It originally started as once. I think it became twice a year. If you're a new member, you're possibly audited 3-4 times in a year. But you know when they're coming. And I as I say, I mean, I've said this before. I know full well that when I walk onto a demolition site, I arrive at an appointed time in an appointed place. They haven't quite rolled out the red carpet, but they may as well have done, because the word has gone round, that geezer with the cameras coming around, hide everything that's squiffy, and just show them the good bits. I know that. Exactly the same with the site audit, exactly the same with the health and safety executive. I agree with Gary on that. As soon as they're gone, it goes back to shit. Yes, it does. Listen, how many people, Jesus, the chat is going mental today. Really touched a nerve. How many people do this? I'm not a particularly fast driver. I'd rather get there alive than get there early. But how many people do you know that drive 30 mile an hour limit and you're driving at 35? See a camera, bang on the anchors. And then once you're past those little dotted lines, put your foot down again. Has that actually helped, or have you basically caused somebody behind you to go up your rear end? Card schemes have logbooks for recording card holders' work activities. Anyone selling an alternative is wasting their time. I still buy my own PPE for comfort and to look cool, right? Yes, I've seen you, Steve. I know what you're all about. I'm setting up a job subscription group. Have 50 companies ready to jump in and operators too. Good luck with that, Dan. Mark had dug a picture of a Zettelmeyer out. Not seen one in years. Yes, that's absolutely right. Jim Turner. The cab is mucky because the door and window is constantly open. I'm in and out all day. Every day, sorting levels, materials, people out, etc. Good hoover out and some muscle before it's sold. It'll be as good as new. Jim, I met you at Hillhead, and Hillhead was nice and warm and everything else. You were wearing a vest and a pair of shorts. You're like that year round, aren't you? You're one of those, aren't you? You're one of those. It's February, and you're sat there in a pair of shorts with the window open. I'm right, aren't I? I can just tell you're that type. You're just way more manly than I am. I'd be sat there in a hat and coat. Let's have a look. Steve says, a lot of operators put one bucket on with teeth, and that would be the choice of bucket for the whole job. Yeah. And again, why have we adopted quick couplers? We can look at it now, 10, 15 years on and go, yes, they've been a major step forward in terms of productivity. Wasn't why they were done in the first place. It was basically because lazy buggers couldn't be asked to get out the cab and actually put on the right attachment. If your machine is bashed and scrapped to funk, then that's clear if your machine is bashed and scratched to funk, then that's clear they can even work in a safe way. Would you put them around people and buildings if the machines were bashed and scraped? Yeah, I always wonder about that. That's the number of times you arrive on a site and you see, particularly across the back of the counterweight, those big gouges. Is that, well, compare and contrast. Look at the machines operated by AR Demolition, Armac Demolition. You look at their counterweights, they are pristine because they've allocated one man to one machine. Those guys take enormously good care of the machine, but also they're not backing into shit. Buildings, bits of steel, people. It's a good point, Steve. Well made. Mick Norton says, it was a semi-automatic quick hitch that was great cause for concern some years back. If the lock pin was inserted and locked off as per manufacturer's guidance, nothing was safer than semi-automatic. I would not entirely agree with operators need not ever leave the cab. During the working day, periodic checks on the working end of the equipment are eminently sensible. Yeah, but I mean, again, I will go back to the same thing time and time again. The main reason is purely that it is there were attachments and machines being used and abused by operators. I mean, particularly in demolition, I've got a grab on, but I've got some steel. I've encountered some steel. Now I could take a moment, put the grab on the ground, pick up the shear, cut the steel, pick the grab up, or I could just give it a wiggle for the next 10 minutes and hope it breaks free, which is causing damage to both the attachment and the excavator as well. And one of our ways of curing that was, well, let's make it as easy as possible to drop off one, put on another. Steve says, the one thing I was told offshore, they never want to hear. I knew that was going to happen. Yeah. You're spot on there, Mark. So much for a 20-minute break, 13-hour day. Yeah. Even if an employer has 10 or 20 sites running simultaneously, he still has the vicarious liability for actions of his subcontractors. I know that's the case, but is that fair? Is that honestly fair? Looking at it from just me here. I've got 4 kids. I know one of them sat next door, but the other 3 are dotted around the place. They're all of an age now that I'm not genuinely responsible for them, but can I be expected to look after them, to look over them, to make sure they're all okay? Of course I can't, because they're not here. I've never really thought about getting a dash cam in the machine to protect myself from absolute idiots. I've nearly thought about getting a dash cam in the machine. Yeah, I wonder what that would reveal. I wonder what that would reveal. This is Steve talking about this app. Hi, my name is Alex. I worked as a digger driver all my life and came up with the idea. Don't know if it's a good idea yet. I need your help to make it better. Introducing a mobile app for operators built by operators. We're looking for people to test our new app. Check out the website below. Don't miss out. www.opery.co.uk. I'll have a look at that after the show. Jim Turner says, I snap. For those of you that don't speak Jim Turner, eat. I snap in my cab. Normal day, 7:30 start, breakfast at 10 for half an hour, snap time at 1 p.m. for half an hour, and then tool up at 4 p.m. and leave at 4:15. But if we're tarmacking, concreting, and lorry loading, unloading, then we grab our snap in between the busy bits. Snap. You're the only person I've ever met that uses the term snap, Jim. Is that a sort of a Nottingham, Derbyshire kind of thing? Or is it just a Jim thing? I don't know. Zetomar did an excellent wheel dozer in the 1960s. They did indeed, including one, which I only learned recently, that was capable of, I think it was like 50 kilometers an hour. Been designed for the German military for fast deployment. And yeah, this thing could, imagine a dozer doing 50, 60 kilometers an hour. You wouldn't want to be seeing that coming the other way, would you? Yes, indeed. If they hit the machine, what's to stop them hitting a building or someone? Fair play. Gary Muirhead says, I've always said if you're doing that damage to your back ballast and you don't know what's behind you, there could be somebody standing there. Yeah, absolutely right. Nick Drews just popped into the chat over on Instagram. Morning, Nick. Haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're fitting well, my friend. So yes, that's. I think we probably took that one to. I don't know if we've actually moved the goalpost, but I think we're all of one mind that basically there has been an erosion of personal responsibility, which is sad. It's sad. Again, I'm very conscious of the fact that I am a man of a certain age. I'll come back to that. Jim Turner says, Chris Ford is my nearest other listener on here. Snap, Chris? Do you do Snap, Chris? Yeah, let me know. I do wonder. I realise we move with the times, and times change, language change, fashions change, and everything else. But there are certain things. I think one of the opening lines of what I wrote about personal responsibility, when I can find it, it's here somewhere. I will find it in a second. Yeah, the notion of taking ownership of one's actions, decisions, and their consequences once stood as a cornerstone of character and integrity. Do you see much of that now? Character and integrity? Even our politicians. Would you want to spend more than 5 minutes in their company? Not sure I would. And we used to hold politicians, the royal family, our celebrities to a higher standard. We don't seem to anymore. You think about all that's gone on. Even down to the last Olympics. I can't remember where the guy was from, but there was a guy taking part in the Olympics, having previously been convicted of raping a 12-year-old girl. Why isn't he banged up? Never mind personal responsibility. Why isn't he banged up? But as somebody said, we don't have a workforce, we have a woke force. And everyone just went, oh, he's probably learned his lesson. Has he? Jim Turner. Snap time, snap cabin. As far as I know, it stems from Cornish miners. So it's probably because I'm from an area that was famous for mining. I wonder. Mick Norton says, maintaining a 600mm gap between the arse end of your machine and any obstacles, buildings, people has been HSE guidance for decades. Yeah. So all those great gouges across the back of counterweights up and down the country, they happened miraculously, did they? Yeah. HSE say one thing, industry does quite another. I think that will do us. I think we've probably talked this one to death. Everybody, go and have a fine and splendid day. Take responsibility for your actions, people, while you're out there. I'll be back tomorrow with more of something remarkably similar. Somebody else that's got my goat today or tomorrow. And I'll be here at 10 o'clock. And I will be here at 10 o'clock, like I was here at 10 o'clock today. Not so much yesterday, but I will be here at 10 o'clock. Till I see you again, have a fine and splendid day. See you soon.